when approaching all of this stuff, be kind to yourself, be kind and be honest. Like we talked about the budgeting piece of it, be honest, and then don't beat yourself up over it when you see what, that breakdown is that you're really doing. It's kind of like how you would treat like, an athlete that you're training. Like, you want to do whatever's going to make them keep going. And so the same thing with your financial health. Like a slip up doesn't mean you just quit and like just throw all the habits in the trash. You know what I mean? So getting back on the wagon, accepting that you're going to, slip up here and there, but it doesn't derail kind of the whole direction of everything.
What's going on, Samson Strength Coach Collective listeners? On today's episode, I mean, seriously, is a very unique episode. And I will give you background context of how Mike and I know each other. This is Mike Campagna. He and I grew up together in Syracuse, went to the same middle school for, do we only went to middle school together for like 2 years or 1 year?
Yeah, I think we had 2 years overlap.
2 years
and then
overlapped.
I was out of there.
Yeah, and then you left me alone like a loser, like Steven Glansberg. And ultimately, still maintain a great friendship. And I was very excited because Mike came to my wedding, which was amazing to see him and meet his fiance. But then also, thought kind of started brewing in my mind when Mike came down for the wedding. And I thought it would be really cool to have Mike come on the podcast because I'm going to give you his official title here. All right. And this is extensive. And I told him before the show, I knew he was a money guy. I didn't know to what extent it was, but Mike is a financial advisor with One Group Retirement Advisors. His role is a senior qualified plan specialist working with company retirement plans. Is that correct?
Nailed it.
Nailed it.
Nailed it.
I think the shrug says otherwise, but
no, that's about it. That works.
But I'm very excited to have you on the show because one of the things I actually just talked about this a couple weeks ago on a podcast was how negligent coaches can be with their money. We probably don't get paid enough for what we do, but at the same time, we make these problems worse by not necessarily being smart, not thinking about the future a lot. I know a lot of coaches are very concerned with the retirement aspect, and this is obviously your specialty. So I was very excited to have you on the show. And I know I just gave you a long-winded introduction, but could you introduce yourself and then give us your background?
Yes. Thank you for the introduction. That was great. So basically, I, like you mentioned, grew up in Syracuse, graduated high school there, and I went right to Syracuse University. And so I went to business school there, but it was kind of like I was very general. I mean, technically my degree is in marketing and entrepreneurship, but I never really knew kind of what I wanted to do. I was like, I'm just going to be a businessman. I don't know. I just was going, having fun, whatever, graduated. And I started applying to jobs, and the first thing that picked me up was financial advisor position. So I just kind of went with it. I was like, let me see how this is going to go. Really not having much of a financial background, even from business school, which is interesting in hindsight. But anyways, so started to, get into it a little bit, learned the content, kind of what it was all about. Started to get my certifications and things of that nature. And I realized it was a field that I liked because it's knowledge that's really just applicable and kind of rooted in helping people, which I like. So I just kind of stuck with it, and I've been in that career path since. First job I took, I was there for, like 8 months or so, but then I got another position, and I've been with the same company for the last 6+ years. So right now I'm kind of entrenched and I'm loving it, and kind of getting into specializing in the retirement planning space, which I know we're going to talk some financial tips. I'm not going to hammer people with retirement talk because, we'll get into why. But basically, just general financial literacy is important, and just not only for, helping others, but selfishly for myself. So, learning what I should be doing and things like that to just set myself up for the future. So anytime I get to chat with a friend about financial things, I'm excited because these conversations don't come up often because no one wants to talk about this stuff. So I'm excited. This should be fun.
I think you hit the nail on the head right there, and I really appreciate you saying that because our careers are very similar in the vein that it is something that helps you out for the rest of your life. My career obviously being oriented around fitness, that's obviously going to help you stay alive for longer, live a higher quality of life. But on the financial side, that is a very practical skill that will help you retire early. It will help you live, again, a very high quality of life. And it's something that we've dedicated our careers to so we can spend all this time thinking about it and we have the base knowledge for it. So it's fun to be able to share the knowledge with other people. But like you said, people don't like to talk about this stuff. They get nervous about it. I'm sure, I think about typical Thanksgiving dinners where people come up and they're like, oh, I've been meaning to work out again, and so I'm really trying to get back into it,
That's me.
But then I would go up to you at the same dinner and I would say, I've really been trying to, increase my financial literacy. I'd probably say it in a way worse way if I didn't have time, but I'm trying to figure these things out. So I think it's awesome to be able for us to both get on a podcast and then talk about these things, especially with a career like strength and conditioning. So I love that we can actually help each other out, right? This is very cool. And I think back to the days we were playing Xbox where, neither of us knew what we wanted to do whatsoever. I thought I was going to be an orthopedic surgeon and fix your dad's knees, and I did not. So I apologize to Ernie.
Yeah, he's going to need them soon too. You still got time to pivot, but he might have to find someone else.
If he can wait 7 years for me to finish my orthopedic residency, then we'll be set. So, but I just appreciate it because it's fun to be able to speak with another professional that's a master in their own field. This is going to be the most broad question you ever get, right? But it is important. Like, what are some major pieces of advice that you give to young professionals on how to manage their money?
Good question. So first of all, it's tough, obviously, like get that out of the way. When you're starting in this, not only the strength career, obviously I've been given some background on how that looks when you're just starting out, but anyone in your early career, like generally speaking, I mean, there's some fields like, engineering and things like that where you come in and you're highly paid, but that's the minority, I should say, not the majority. So I think the best thing that you could do is sort of just kind of start as soon as you can with the habit building. And you could draw the parallels kind of with like lifting and just staying in shape. Like it's so much easier once you get into the routine. Uh, you know, Same kind of thing with budgeting. Like if I go lift 4 days a week for like a month, I'm kind of in it and it's easy. I'm looking forward to doing it and I want to keep the routine going. And it's kind of the same thing with things like budget and habits and things of that nature. So I think that getting started early with trying to figure out what your best practices are in terms of what to do with your money is important. There's a lot of trial and error. Especially you get that first paycheck, you might have a tendency to just spend it right away. And then it's like, oh, one paycheck in, we're already behind. Like it's tough, especially, and like I said, in the strength field where first couple of years, maybe you aren't even getting paid yet. So early career, everyone's heard of the emergency savings fund, right? Like the try to set aside some money, but it's so much easier said than done. So one of the things that I like to look at to sort of put yourself like in a positive direction for these habits, like just in general, is automation. So it goes, with I'll just use retirement contributions for an example. Like if you have a 401k or a 403b, it just comes out of your paycheck every time you get paid and goes into your account. You set it up initially and then you kind of don't think about it, it just happens. So things like building an emergency savings fund, like I don't know about you, but in my bank app, you can just see, you can open up an extra savings account, things like that. Just do it all in the palm of your hand and just automate putting X amount of dollars into that account and, timing it right around when you get paid. So it's almost like your own paycheck deduction. Just as soon as your money hits your account, you got whatever amount of dollars going into your emergency savings fund. So obviously those, it's tough when you don't have a ton of discretionary income, but this is where I say anything is better than nothing. Like, even if you're trying to start with 5, 10 bucks, inch that up, 25, 50 bucks a paycheck, if you can, if your early career, you're just starting out as a strength coach, if you can build 500 to $1,000 in a savings account, that would be really impressive, and can be very helpful when those unexpected expenses kind of pop up. I think the three major expenses that most people can overspend at, which are also, probably three of the biggest expenses you'll always deal with, are housing, transportation, and food. So obviously, housing is so variable when you're all over the country, working in different places. You never really know how it's going to look necessarily, but you got your rent, and then you've got, if you have a car, like, those are your fixed payments. Those are going to be what they are. So with food, one of the biggest things is, obviously, it's so easy to kind of eat out, order Uber Eats, DoorDash, whatever you do. I'm definitely guilty of it. And I think that if you can kind of get in that habit of eating at home, that can go a long way towards your budget. And there's actually a couple apps that I've found recently that I know at least one of them works up here in Syracuse. I think they're all dependent on geography, but there's an app called Flip, and there's an app called Flash Food. And basically, grocery stores partner with those apps and kind of advertise food that's not expired, but just getting closer. So it's like they want to kind of move that inventory. And so you can get deals on groceries that are otherwise perfectly fine, but they just want to move them because they're, they have newer stuff, right? So they want to get the old stuff out of the way. Like, you can get a basket, if you can get a basket of fruits and veggies for $5, you know what I mean? That can go a long way. So getting in the habit of eating at home, I think, is huge. Preparing meals to bring to work with you so you can eat at lunch instead of going out and getting a sandwich or whatever, things like that. Food is a massive expense. We all obviously eat every day if you're healthy, if you can. So I think that's like an immediate thing that you can look to. If you ever spend time tracking your budget, which I think is a good idea, it can be eye opening. You'll see it pop out. So that's something I go to right away, is the food, and then kind of based off of that, like, things that we're doing every day, like eating. Couple other things that I know I indulge in, and like you've told me, some strength coaches like to indulge in, are energy drinks and nicotine pouches.
Correct.
So, so I love a Celsius. I love a Zyn. There are cheaper alternatives for both of these things. Now, in a perfect world, do you not have either? Yeah, obviously, but realistically, like, okay, this is what I'm doing, so let me try to do it in a smart, responsible way. Zyn is the most expensive nicotine pouch. Get a different one, right? Get the one that costs half as much, right? Energy drinks, I know a Celsius, $3, $4. I got Aldi brand energy drinks recently that tasted just like a fake Red Bull. They were a pack of 4 for $3. So things like that. I mean, Gatorade too. Like, I drink a lot of Gatorade. It's kind of my, when I don't want to drink water, but I want to feel like I'm hydrating and being responsible, I drink Gatorade. Buy a 12 pack or whatever amount, get it in bulk, right? So you're not going to the vending machine every day or going to the gas station every day like me and buying a fat Gatorade and a Zen, and that's like $11 or something. And it's like, it's those little things. And when you're dealing with a tight budget, you don't have a lot of room to be indulgent in those things all the time. Maybe once a week if you've done well with your budget, but not daily.
Yeah, there's so much good stuff that you said within there that I can relate to. But I do want to compliment you on one thing, which is you're removing the shame from the financial aspect, right? Like, I listen to a lot of financial, advisors, people who probably did not go through the same process that you did, right? But they just ended up to get a little TikTok or Instagram famous, or, people who are kind of seen as these paragons of financial fortitude. And they always kind of break it down in a way where it's like, well, you're dumb if you do this, or you need to focus on this. You don't care about your future. And it's like a personal attacking way. And again, this is where I relate it back to the similarities in our profession. When somebody comes to talk to me about fitness, I'm never like, well, why the heck haven't you squatted for every day for the past 4 years? I can't believe you're so, sloppy to not do these things. Right. What I tell everybody is literally just walk. Like, just make sure you're getting 10,000 steps in a day, and then we can start building on it from there. And I see so much more success with that. So I appreciate removing the shame aspect, because I think that's what turns a lot of people off to financial fortitude or knowledge or literacy, if that's the case that you've seen.
Yeah, I think it's important to relate in that sense. Like I never want to just sit here and be like, yeah, I'm better than you because I do these financial habits and I'm smart about it. Like it's not real. Like I do, I have bad budget and financial habits just like everyone else. I just am maybe more aware about it and maybe kind of know what I need to be doing to fix it and can maybe better attack those things. But it's about being real. I mean, like at work, I talk with people that are making, $1 million a year, and I talk with people that are making minimum wage all across the board, and everybody's different, and everybody's, you know, not everyone's receptive to the same sort of messaging, and you gotta just be human to people and don't make them feel bad for what they're doing. You know what I mean? You are who you are. It's just like, how can you take baby steps in the right direction and just continue to build on those habits? That's kind of my approach to it. Same way with when I'm trying to get back in the gym, because I'm very hot and cold with it. I'll have good streaks and bad streaks. I'm on a bad one right now, but it's like I'll tell myself, like, I just need to go there. If I go there, whatever I do is whatever I do. Maybe I'll just do a little cardio, a little sauna, or whether I lift or not. But like just starting the habits, like get used to going, and then you can build on it from there. So just little bites, and it turns into better habits long term.
Well, I mean, literally the equivalent of just making sure you're getting 10,000 steps in. And please don't let me try to be the financial expert on a podcast with somebody who actually is, but it changed my life, was literally just writing out the budget. And so within the first 3 months, I didn't even set stipulations of, okay, I'm going to limit myself to this amount. I'm going to limit myself to, one haircut per month or whatever it is. Right. I just started off by tracking every single thing that I was spending. And it was revolutionary for me, because I did not realize that those gas station trips where I'm getting a coffee, I'm getting a breakfast burrito or whatever, ends up costing me $150 per month. And then that $150 now becomes a problem because I had to get the brake pads replaced on my car or something, like small things that I just became aware of, and it made a massive difference. And then it progressed for me into, okay, now I've got, so, and this is for strength coaches too who love Excel, right? I literally wrote out my own Excel budget. I've got 4 columns on it. One column is total expenses for the month, and then what I spent each thing on. And then I've got a green, which is like, I've got to spend money on this, which is my retirement contributions. It's stocks, it's, rent. It is basic things that are like, okay, literally at the end of the day, I have to spend my money on this. I've got yellow, which is like, okay, I don't necessarily have to spend my money on this, but I really, really like it. It contributes to my quality of life. And then I've got red, which is like, okay, I definitely don't have to spend money on this, and I should limit this as much as possible. And so it took me a year or two to really hone in on what my habits are, what's the best way that works for me. But just starting tracking everything was fantastic for me, because it really revealed a lot.
Yeah, and it's the thing is, you don't have to be any sort of financial expert to do that. It's like, especially, I like to deal in cash where I can, but mostly everything nowadays is on credit cards, right? So you can go back and just look. Like my sort of method of doing this would be, I use the reminders app a ton in the iPhone. I've lived on it since college. I don't have a memory. I just use the reminders app. But it's like, set a daily reminder every day for a month at the end of the day to look back and just write down what you spent. And then you go in at the end of the month, consolidate and kind of categorize it. The way that you just described your green, yellow, red, like that is, in layman's terms, exactly what any of these large financial companies would tell you. Like, I could go pull from Fidelity Investments, their recommended budget where, 50, 30, 20, this, and that. It's exactly just what you described. Like, you don't have to overcomplicate it. And to be honest, you can make a lot of ground just doing that one time and just really just kind of taking a look. And sometimes things just jump out like, wow, I door dashed 5 times. Like, let's do 2 times this month. You know what I mean? Like little things like that. Or, whoa, I just noticed that subscription hit that I don't need and don't remember and I can cancel it. Like little things like that. Or even like I said before, like with the Gatorades I like to drink, like you notice that, oh, I bought an individual Gatorade 15 times. Just go buy a pack, So little things like you don't have to be an expert. It's just like putting a little effort towards it.
No, 100%. And it adds up. It really adds up in the long run. And so specifically with budgeting, right? If I never had my experience with budgeting, you're talking to me as a strength coach who's never budgeted before, recommendation I've heard a lot is just to start off by tracking what you're spending. What would your recommendations be for the next step after that? After you've been tracking for a month or two, you kind of get a general idea of what your spending habits kind of look like.
Yeah, so I think once you've tracked, I think in an ideal world you would be able to, have like maybe 3 months of a sample size just because of the variability on a month to month. But even if you're doing a month, like I think categorizing everything is important, whether it's the way that you described or not, but just sort of grouping things and seeing, where are your biggest areas of expenses? Can I trim those? No. Okay, let me move to the next one. And just finding, trimming excess fat, I think. So categorization, so you can sort of visualize it. I like Excel too. You can change the colors of the cells and make it all pretty. It's great. So categorizing and then identifying, like, we talked about baby steps. If you can go look back in the month and find like 2 or 3 things that you could do better the next month and just really hone in on doing that, that's progress and that's a step in the right direction. And that extra money that you've saved there, 20, 50, $100, that could be you contributing to your retirement plan. That could be you making an extra little bit of payment towards a credit card or a student loan. So, it's a categorization, attack the low hanging fruit first and work up from there.
Yeah, what I did too when I first created that, green, yellow, red, I would actually write down every single purchase, and then I would literally put the color right next to it just to see it, so I could visually see. And then, like my first couple of months, it was like red, 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 green, one yellow, and then ultimately I would also kind of cheat on it a little bit too. And I'd be like, no, my third haircut for the month is definitely a yellow, But then again, you start to see these things and you start to recognize, and I feel like get a little bit more honest with yourself about, like you said, trimming the fat, finding out areas that aren't 100% necessary. And then it makes a difference for you. Now, I want to talk about the first paycheck again briefly, because you bring up a great point, right? I remember my first paycheck, I made the exact same mistake. And so, for some listeners here who are younger and haven't gotten a new job yet, the kind of industry standard is to give you a moving stipend when you're going across the country. So I moved from Tennessee to Texas Tech. I got a moving stipend of 10% of the salary. So it was supposed to be $7,000, right? And so I get this moving stipend. I also get my first paycheck. And before they both cleared and before I actually saw the moving stipend, I calculated it as $7,000, right? And so I put it into like my pool of buying furniture and everything. So it was so dumb. I got a king bed, like the nicest mattress with like they finessed me beyond belief. They were like, oh, well, if you spend this amount, you'll get the, the bed platform that raises and changes shapes or whatever. And I was like, oh, this is incredible. So I spent all $7,000. And then of course the moving stipend comes in and it was like 4,500. And so
Uncle Sam.
Yep, exactly. I learned a quick lesson, so for somebody who hasn't necessarily been on a full-time payroll yet and is, expecting their first paycheck, what should they really expect of, what you actually think you're going to make? So dividing my yearly salary by 12 versus what it's actually going to come out to when I get paid.
So I don't know if this is going to be exactly answering what you said, but one tip that I have just in regards to that. So obviously everyone's aware of like having a credit score, right? We want to have good credit, and having debt, having credit cards like in a healthy way helps your credit score. One thing I would say to try to stick to as best as you can when you're early on like that, just starting to get paid, is not using credit. Don't spend something that's not there. Uh, Spend money that you see in your account. Don't, because I've done the same thing. I remember getting my first credit card, and it's like, well, I can just swipe this and I'm good, dude. Like, I'll get paid later and I'll pay it later. Like, it's just a later problem, and it can snowball so quickly. So I think just dealing with the money that you have. I think that the way you just described is kind of a prime example, even on a smaller scale. Whether it's, if your first paycheck is $1,000, if you want to give a rough estimate, I mean, just take 30% right off the top, and it could be even more than that. So like, okay, it's going to be 700, and I am not spending anything until I see it, if possible. I mean, if you got to fill up your tank of gas or whatever, and your only option is a credit card, so be it. You need transportation, right? But I think it's just about trying to be really aware of the specifics, and don't get overwhelmed by, oh my God, I got a big boy paycheck. Like, I'm on a payroll now. I'm going to get another paycheck in 2 weeks. Like, it is exciting, but I think this is another one of those things where I might say all these things, but that's one of those like live and learn type of things. Like, sometimes you can say, I can give all these tips, but you have to feel it in order to really hammer the point home. And then when you go to, pay for something, or, you know, buy something that you need or we're planning on and looking forward to, and the money's not there, then it's like, well, these are the consequences of my actions. And it's not, again, it's not a shame thing. It's just like naivety, if that's the proper way to pronounce that word. But it's just
Yes.
learning how to deal with money. It sometimes, it's a learn by experience thing. So just don't be overzealous, and don't, you gotta be able to get an understanding of what your budget does for you, which could take more than one paycheck, but then trying to live within that bound.
Mm. I appreciate you bringing up credit cards too, because this is a universal problem for strength and conditioning, in my opinion. And I'll be 100% transparent here. I'll tell everybody the details of this, just because people get nervous about talking about credit cards as well too, and they feel like they got fooled or bamboozled. Like, I mean, partially, but
Yeah.
then at the same time, like, it happens to everybody, that everybody I've spoken to has at least run up a credit card one time beyond what they, were capable of paying.
It's like a
But
human rite of passage.
exactly, right. It's part of
Yeah.
the deal. So I remember I got, and this was another one, a lesson that I had to learn. Like, I just had to feel, like you said. So I got a letter from Temple when I was at Temple that said, your refund's gonna be processed soon, right? And then I got in the same mailbox a letter that said, you are now able to apply for the Discover It card. And I said, amazing, fantastic. I said,
Sign me up.
so here's the deal. I just got a credit card and I'm about to get a refund from school, so I can spend on this credit card as much as I want, and then I can just pay it off with the refund from school. So I had a $2,000 limit. Within 2 weeks, I spent $2,000. Okay. And incredible. I was living the dream, as a college student. I was
Probably a
buying,
great couple weeks.
oh, it was incredible. I mean, seriously, I was buying drinks for everybody. I was like, I'm the man, whatever you need, like basically running around the streets handing out money. And so I then rack up the credit card and I say, okay, well, it's about time for that refund to come in. So where is it? I called the financial office and they got back to me and said, yeah, that letter was sent to you by mistake. So you will have no refund being processed to you. And so I was devastated, couldn't figure it out. Right. But then I'll be honest about this stuff. Like, I paid off the credit card. And so they said, hey, you're such a good credit user, you now have $7,000. And I said, well, at some point I'll be able to pay this off. So I ran up another credit card to $7,000, and then I paid it all off again. Then they bumped my credit up to $10,000. And I literally was like, no shot it's going to happen again. There's no way. And no joke, I literally did it again. So if you add it all up, there was $19,000 in credit cards that I would just ended up spending. And then at that point, I finally learned my lesson and I paid off the 10,000. It got bumped to 15,000. I was like, not again. So now
No.
if I've got $1 balance on my credit card, I immediately pay it off because I just can't stand to live with it. But it's part of what happens. And I think you bring up a great point is until you see the money, you do not have the money. Like things can happen. Anything in the world could possibly happen. And so understand that that money's not in your account. It is not your money yet.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's I it might be a little stretch to call credit card companies predatory, but I mean, a little bit.
They found
Like
me.
it's the thing is it's like, it's almost sort of misleading in a way if you're not really, financially sound quite yet. You see the number. I've had it happen too, like, "Oh, we're raising your limit." Like, "Why? What did I do? I'm the same." I so you're just going to let me spend more? Uh it's and then that you swipe it and it works and it's like, okay, so what's the issue? I can keep doing this, but it always comes back to bite you, and it's tough to dig out of those holes. So interest rates on credit cards are not friendly. So
That's a
that's
great way to
like,
put it.
yeah, kind of goes back to just the idea of like where possible, especially early career, try to just deal in debit, if you will, just the money that's in there, not credit.
Yeah, no, seriously, and it makes a big difference. And I spoke to somebody else about kind of having a side job on a podcast recently, and just said like, it's very cool to finally inch into having a positive net worth. Like it's fun to know that if I died today, I have more money than I have debts. So
Hell yeah.
it makes a difference. We kind of talked about just in general budgeting. Making sure that you are working off of debit if you can. What are some other kind of mistakes that you see people make when they first start their full-time job? Is there anything that we missed?
So I think that one thing that I'd like to mention, well, I'll give a quick one and then another one. The quick one is just the retirement account aspect. So obviously, like, that's the crux of what I do every day is help people with their retirement accounts. Like, just to give a little context, our clients are the business, like, ABC Corporation, and they utilize us to help construct their 401k plans. And then one of the things I spend a lot of time on is sitting with employees and just anybody that works for that company and helping them navigate their retirement plan and using it to the best that they can and things of that nature. So if you are if you're early on in your career, there's no better time to start saving for retirement, but it's tough because you're also probably the poorest that you'll ever be. So it's easy to say, you should be saving for retirement. I think that if it's in your budget, if you can save 1% of each paycheck, again, it's typically automated. If you can set 1% of each paycheck to go into a retirement account, that's huge. They are portable, so it doesn't matter that you're going to a different job maybe in 2 years and then another one in another 2 years. You can take it with you. So that's, it's not the moving around jobs is not the excuse to not save for retirement. If you can't afford it, I get it. Like, I'm never shaming someone. Sometimes I meet with literal just 18-year-olds fresh out of high school that are starting a retirement account, and I'm trying to explain these things to them and they're just like, "Yeah, like, I can't do this." And I'm like, "That's okay. That's okay. Just know what this is, that it's here, and when your budget changes, we can talk again and we'll figure it out." So that's one thing early on. Like, if you can swing it, save for retirement, even if it's just a teeny tiny bit, because without getting into too much depth about investing, the longer that a dollar is invested in the market, the better, obviously, right? The snowball effect, compound interest, saving some money, in your early 20s goes a long, long way, more than you can even kind of rationalize, especially if you just stay consistent over the years. So if you can save in a retirement account, do it. If not, don't beat yourself up over it, but just be aware of whenever your budget changes if you can get that started. I think another thing that is a thing to be aware of as a potential mistake when you're newer into a career is, let's look at, like, if we get to years two through 5, and let's say you're starting to advance a little bit, you're doing well, you've invested in yourself, maybe you've got some new designations that show that you're an expert in certain things, and now you can get paid a little more, and you're starting to make a little bit more money. It's easy to let your lifestyle costs kind of grow with your income, and you just sort of adapt, and just, okay, I'm making a little more, so I'm just gonna spend a little more freely, which is understandable. And again, I've done the exact same thing. I still remember, like, I had to ask and kind of fight a little bit to get a raise a few years ago when I was, first starting out, and it's like, wow, this is different, this is nice, but if you just go and spend it all, and it's, you're kind of living the same life. So it's about, like, as you start to ascend in your career and first start to see that you can, get paid more and get, do better, get pay increases, better benefits, and things of that nature, don't grow out of those habits that you've started to build of just being smart and being frugal where applicable. Because then you're just kind of snowballing yourself back into those poor habits. So I think that's a big thing. Like, when you start to get a raise, the first things that you should be looking at is, can I put a little bit more into my retirement? Can I put a little bit more into my emergency savings? Can I put a little bit more aside for, the rainy day? Just those types of things, before you go ahead and upgrade your uh, your apartment or your car. Like, you don't need to necessarily do those things right away. It's nice, of course, maybe you have a roommate, now you make more money, and you want to get your own place. That could be great, but then you're back at the same place with your budget, where you don't have a ton left over to do what you want to do, and maybe have fun on the weekends, and go like crazy like you, and buy everybody drinks. You know what I mean? So just don't let the ascension of your career influence your lifestyle too much.
That's such a great piece of advice, and I really appreciate you saying that. It's just I see it happen so much. I've done it myself, where I remember getting a pay raise and thinking to myself, okay, finally we can move out of this apartment that's small and move into somewhere else. And then I went back and looked at my budget, and I was like, okay, no, I can actually put in $500 extra dollars into my retirements, my savings, whatever it is. And that would really, if we stayed in this apartment for another year, I mean, that adds up to what? That's going to be $6,000. Ultimately, that it makes a big difference. And like you say, compounding interest is a very real thing, and it makes a big difference in the long run. I think it's another piece about it is it becomes addicting. Like, when you really start to save, when you really start to budget, and you start to contribute to retirement plans, like, it is very fun. I spent many nights like just looking up retirement calculator, based off of a specific yield, like where I could be if I put this much money in versus this much money in. And at the end of the day, like, even with a typical strength coach salary, if you're working with, $40,000 to $60,000 for a lot of us, when you look at how much it can compound over time, we're talking about a difference of millions if you start contributing, even slightly larger amounts younger. So it's addicting and it's fun, because then you realize, okay, I can retire way earlier than I thought I could as well.
Yeah, and it's not always about having the highest paying job. It's like, if you're a consistent saver and you start early and can keep it going for the long term. I'm not saying everyone's going to be able to save $10 million. It's not realistic, or even a million maybe, but point being is, if you're consistent, you'd be surprised how well you can do with the consistent long term saving. The tough part is there's no instant gratification. So it's kind of a brick by brick slow burn, but once you start to see, after a couple years, the statement, the account's going up, it's a nice feeling.
It's really cool. And then I will say, one of the best things I started doing was investing in an IRA. immediately because I knew I could not take that money back. Like I did a high yield savings account at first, and then I would end up pulling money from that and using that. And then when I put the money in the IRA, obviously I could take it back out, but there's a lot of penalties, and I would really lose a lot more than I thought. So having an option where I had to put my money in, and I just knew it would not be smart to take it back out, made a big difference for me too.
Yeah, and an IRA is a type of retirement account that makes sense in your field as well, because what I was speaking to earlier, like saving in a company plan, if you're moving around a lot, then you're going to have to, do a little administrative work to move your retirement savings with you. And the thing is that it becomes a distributable event if you leave a company and you have the ability to just take the money out, and it's going to be hit a lot. You're going to get a penalty, you're going to get tax taken out, but you can take it out. And so if you stick with an IRA, that's not attached to a company, it's just attached to you. And you can just automate those savings like we've talked about, and X amount of dollars per month it's going in, um and then there you go, and you're off to a good start.
Yeah, and it's fun. Seriously, it is fun to know that you have a financial future instead of just living paycheck to paycheck. As somebody who's been in both areas, it's a lot cooler to know that at some point I can retire and I don't have to be 90 years old teaching kids how to power clean.
Yeah, because I mean, sometimes I talk with people who say, like, yeah, I'm never going to retire. And, they're okay with it. Me, like, I am absolutely trying to retire. I,
Yeah.
I do like what I do, and I'm thankful to like what I do, but I don't want to do it until I'm 90. Like, I want to retire, when I still can move around. I'm still healthy. I live somewhat of an active lifestyle and enjoy the fruits of my labor. You know what I mean? We're all going to be likely working for 30, 40, maybe even 50 years in some cases. You deserve to, like, kind of call it quits and live an honorable life and not have to scrounge up and just, get by with whatever social security is going to be giving you, which by the time we're that age, who knows what social security is going to look like. So, and that's just honestly another side tidbit. Um, Sometimes people ask me about the future of social security. My thing is, like, I don't know. I don't know, so therefore, don't rely on it. If it comes to you and you become that age and you get to take Social Security, then that's great, but look at retirement as something that you need to create for yourself with something like IRAs, 401ks. If you are fortunate enough to find a job that has a pension plan, that works amazingly as well, but you gotta create your own retirement, and so it's about, doing it early if you can, but, just consistency is the biggest thing.
But it's literally money you can't see yet in regards to the Social Security. So don't buy the king size mattress. Chill out just a little bit. We talked a lot about early career. What are some of the mistakes that you see people make later in their careers, closer to retiring age?
Later careers, I think later career mistakes, a lot of it involves kind of pushing off the planning piece of what life is going to look like as you get older, because a lot of things change late career. Like if we assume that someone is, let's say, 50 plus, they may have kids that could be anywhere from high school to college to out of college. There's a lot of change that comes with, you've spent the last however many years with a family at home, children in the house, things that you're paying for. Um, and now that's all going to be completely different. Like, you get to a point where, empty nesters, now it's you and the kids are out doing their own thing. And it's time for you and maybe your spouse to plan what's life going to look like. And that's one thing that goes back to, the retirement saving piece. The accumulation, like the saving over the years, should be pretty easy in terms of process. Like, you're just you can automate it, put money in those accounts, get it invested. But then it's like, well, what do I do? I have this chunk of money that I've saved up. How do I do this? How do I spread it out? How do I make it last? So I think planning is something that it's never too early to start figuring out. I mean, realistically, do you need to be retirement planning for, how you're going to spend your money at 65. When you're 35, probably not. But once you know that you're sort of on the back nine, or even like the back sort of like 4 or 5, just getting towards the end, um, you want to start looking at those things. Healthcare costs are going to be a huge thing for almost everybody in retirement. Um, your cost of living, like, do you want to move? Do you want to stay with where you live now? Because maybe you've paid the house off by the time you're at retirement. What are your debts looking like? Should you be attacking those instead of, it's that's another, carrying debt is something that's detrimental, no pun, Uh, I know. That was awesome. Great.
That's a good
Um,
one. I like it. I like it.
but yeah, so it's just about don't get complacent. I think people kind of get in this autopilot late career of you've been doing it for so long, and now you've 25, 30 years in kind of the same routine, going to work, doing this, doing that. Retirement, and as you get later in your career, it's just another extreme lifestyle change. And I think that going into that sort of blind is a big mistake that I see. And not even an advertisement for myself, but like work with a financial advisor. Like if you have assets that you have, and I've saved this much, and this is what I'm going to use to sustain myself and my family in retirement. It's not easy to figure out how to go about it. And the worst possible thing would be running out of money when you're still alive, right? Now all of a sudden you're 89 and you got to go be a Walmart greeter. So, and no shade to those people, but
It's a
it's
reality, though. It happens a lot.
yeah. So I think just making sure that you're aware that you need to have a plan, I think is probably my biggest thing.
Yeah, again, I appreciate everything that you're saying, because this is exactly what I wanted to have you on, because there's mistakes that can be made at every level, and there's no shame attached to those mistakes, but it's good to be aware of these things, and it's good to know exactly what to look for. My parents didn't get a financial advisor until their late 50s. And they said, if they can go back and make one difference, first it would have been they had an opportunity to buy a Chipotle, I think in like 2000 or something. And they said that we would have bought the Chipotle.
Yeah.
And then this next piece was they would go back and then work with a financial advisor earlier. They compared it to having like a realty management company work with you. Like there's a lot of stuff that, you could probably end up figuring it out on your own, but ultimately when you let somebody else, an expert, handle it, it makes a big difference. It takes a lot of the stress out of it, a lot of the emotions out of the decisions you're making as well, because you have an expert who can help guide you in those decisions.
Yeah, taking the emotions out is a huge thing, especially with money, because it gets very emotional. And to have sort of that sounding board is big. I think a lot of people like may have a sour taste in their mouth regarding financial advisors, which I don't even blame them for, because a lot of people's first experience with a financial advisor is being like 21, and your buddy from high school or college just started, and now they're calling you and they're selling you life insurance and stuff like that. Like, which that's how a lot of people get their start in the field, but that's not what every advisor does. And you don't have to work with someone who is just sitting there trying to sell you things. There's a lot of diversity in the way that financial advisors can go about their jobs. And if you can find someone who's a fiduciary, someone who's fee based so that they're not, getting commissions based on products and things like that, um, it can be a huge help for just getting pointed in the right direction. And also, like I said, like in retirement, just understanding how to unravel everything and create that plan of here's how we use the money in retirement, and then hopefully here's how we pass money on to the next generation as well.
Are there any other like really key things that you look for with the financial advisor? I know you mentioned the fiduciary, but anything else, relationship, based? What are the things people should look for?
Yeah, so to start with, definitely fiduciary is a big thing. Being a fiduciary means that you are by law obligated to do right by your clients. Some it's becoming more of a environment where that is more and more prevalent, which is a good thing. But some advisors are able to sort of conduct things in a different way, which is more based on suitability, which can kind of be like, yeah, if I can prove on paper that this is uh, a fit for these people, then there's no issue, and we can go forward, and now I can make some money on it. I think being a fiduciary is important. Like, I have a couple of fiduciary designations that, I like to mention to people when I'm talking with them about their retirement accounts. Like, I'm just obligated to just help you figure out what's best for you. And that's the approach that you want your advisor to be taking. I think fee based is important. There are certainly cases where, if you talk to an advisor and they present a certain product that may work for you and there is a commission, as long as they're transparent about it and you are okay with all of the things involved, and that's fine. But the best, I think, in my personal opinion, way to go about having an advisor manage your money is for a fee, because it's transparent. This is X percent of your assets, and that is going to be what it is. And the money goes up, the account value goes up, the advisor makes a little more. If the money goes down, the advisor makes less. And so that's like a lot of our company's business with individuals. That's not with the companies like I mainly do. It's almost all fee based. And there's been times, like, if we just go back to like March 2020 when COVID hit, the market obviously was in shambles. And that means that everybody's pay took like a 30% cut, and that's just how it is. But that's the transparent part of it, and the we're in it together part of it. um and in a lot of cases, if an advisor is doing their job right, if they continue to help grow your assets more and more and more, they'll lower the fee and continue to just be fair about it. So I think fiduciary is a big thing, fee based is a big thing where applicable. Um and trust. I think trust is huge. Like, if you meet with someone and you're like just not getting good vibes personally, like, I wouldn't I would try to find someone else. Like, this is a relationship that you don't need to talk to them every day, but you want to feel okay with, like, being able to pick up the phone and give them a call. You shouldn't have to feel like, man, I don't want to bother them. You know what I mean? Like, you're paying them, so you can call them. So anytime you can get like a reference from a friend or someone that who's worked with an advisor, who's done right by them, if you can get a reference, that's always good. Otherwise, try to look for those main things, fiduciaries. And you can look up any financial advisor you want. There's databases that list, every financial advisor, shows your criminal record, any infractions you've done. So look them up. I've had people ask me about my records and things on there, which has nothing, but it's just interesting to know that people look it up. And, I don't think a lot of people know that you can look any financial advisor up. So do your little background check too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting you say that, because I actually just had this conversation with one of our players recently where it was clear that his agent was not being 100% honest with him about some things. And, it's funny because we have two players on the team. One was working out for NBA teams and one was not. And basically the agent for the one not working out for the NBA teams was like, well, now's not the time to work out for NBA teams. And then his teammate, one of his best friends, just had 17 workouts with NBA teams. And so it was like, that doesn't seem correct, and he was kind of a little upset about it, understandably so. And I said, you need to call him. And I said, and you need to ask him what's going on, because you're paying this guy. He literally gets a percentage of your paycheck every single time you get paid. So you need to have somebody who can be upfront and honest with you. So I'm glad that the same advice extends to financial advisors. It could be almost the layman's agent, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, more or less it is, because you're going to, you come to me and say, Mike, I've got X amount of dollars to manage. Then I say, okay, I'm going to go to the market and I'm going to look at all these different mutual funds, ETFs, stocks, whatever you're looking for, these things that you can invest in. And I'm curating based on what you need and what you like and all those things, what's going to fit for you. Then I'll bring it to you and say, here are some things here's a bevy of different options that I think all might work for you. And then we kind of look at it together and make a decision. So it's a team effort. And yes, it should be a transparent two-way relationship. Absolutely.
Okay, and so I'm curious about one other thing that I want to make sure we touch on, which is a lot of people struggle with the debt aspect, as you mentioned, and a lot for strength coaches can end up being student loans. I know that there's my advice to every single intern is to get a GA, so just a general assistantship where they pay for your school. Because I'm the one who, when you talk about, feeling decisions that you've made, I have a ridiculous amount of student loans and I have to pay a hefty monthly payment. But a lot of times, it could be a situation like I'm in where you get paid as a part-time worker, and that's kind of essentially what you use to just survive. And then you're paying for the school on top of that. What are some of the ways to best manage student loans or just best manage general debt?
Yeah, so definitely great question. Obviously, extremely applicable in this case, especially with strength coaches. So I think so. A few things here. First of all, and it may seem obvious, but just got to say it is know your loan type, know your interest rate. Federal, private. There's different structures and ways to go about dealing with different kinds of loans. When you have federal loans, you can look at things like income driven repayment plans, so they can be a little bit more flexible when it comes to what you have to pay versus what you're taking home and things like that. Anytime that there's any possible public service loan forgiveness, I know uh, in Syracuse, the city schools here, if there's programs where when teachers go into the district, if they work there for X amount of years, they can get their loans resolved. So just being aware of what could be available to you, whether you're going to go down those routes or not, just the awareness of it. Um, when it comes to like private loans, you could look at stuff like refinancing. It's just it could be risky with possibly losing like federal protections like those income driven repayment type of things, deferment, forgiveness, like those things. But if you don't lose those things, if you have a good credit score, you can look at refinancing because you could possibly get a lower rate, possibly get a lower payment, or even help consolidate loans and just make the process a little bit easier. Um, and I think go with student loans and with credit cards, I like to say to prioritize the ones with the highest interest first. So if we use like an easy numbers example, like just let's just say $100 per, this is so not real, but $100 per month going towards student loans, three different ones, and one interest rate's 25, one's 20, one's 15. If you can do 25 a piece to each of those, then you've got your extra $25. Put that all towards the highest interest rate one, right? And you keep attacking that one until it gets down. And then let's say if you're able to pay that highest rate off, now you've got two left. You take that entire 50 that was going towards that high one, and now you've got 75 going towards the second highest interest rate, 25 going to the lowest still. Pay that off, and then when you're done there, the full 100 can go towards the lowest interest rate loan. So obviously those numbers are not real, but the point being, just attack the highest interest rate debts first, because that interest is killer. So that's a big thing for me. And just one more note, which could, I think it's typically more of a student loan thing, not really a credit card thing, but automation. I'm a big fan of automation for saving, but also for paying, so sometimes certain loans, if you set up automated payments, they'll give you maybe a little bit of a discount on the interest or things of that nature. And also important, just not missing a due date, so automation is a big thing there as well.
Yeah, with my experience with student loans, refinancing was a great option for me because I had half of them in private loans that I knew, and I did a lot of research to make sure that those wouldn't be forgiven based off of my specific instance. And so I refinanced it during COVID, which was like the best decision I ever made. I think like the total interest was like 7.6%, and then I refinanced to 4.5%. But in that percentage, I also set up automatic payments, and it came out to 4% per month now, or 4% APR. So it was very exciting to see, okay, just based off of interest, I'm paying this much less because I was able to make a better decision. So I think one thing that kept me from doing it for a long time was I was just scared. Like I was scared to look at it. I was scared to understand that there's this daunting task of paying off. I mean, for me, it was $120,000, and knowing that one day I'm going to have to pay these off. But just looking into it and getting more information made me feel a lot more comfortable with it. And then I found solutions that made things better. I do the automatic payments, like you mentioned, and it now, has dwindled down to something where I'm like, okay, I can actually see myself paying this off one day instead of just having debt for the rest of my life.
Yeah, it's paying down debt is kind of like saving for retirement in that it's not always going to be a quick thing, but you just kind of just keep at it, just little by little, brick by brick. And eventually, you start to see progress, and the progress is what keeps you going. It's like lifting. Like when I get back in the gym and I have my, like I said, like my good streaks, once I start to feel a little bit like, oh, okay, my shoulders are getting a little bit back, I got a little shoulder something, then I'm like, I'm in. I'm like, I'm ready to go. It's real. I reminded myself I can make a dent in this goal that I have. And now I'm like more into accomplishing it. You know what I mean? It makes it better. So it's just about it, as with anything, like just the habits, the consistency, and capitalizing on seeing your progress.
Yeah, and one other piece I really love that you mentioned was not missing the payments, and it makes me laugh because I remember when I destroyed my credit with 100% revolving utilization and all these things. Right, I would look at my credit scorecard, and the one thing that I could always hang my hat on was zero missed payments, and I was like, hell yeah, at least I got one thing that's green, because
That's
everything
right.
else is dark red. But now it's obviously changed around a lot. But it was funny to hear you mention that because I'm like, yeah, that was the one thing that I could say I didn't do. I never missed a payment.
There you go. I mean, consistency is key.
Yep, yep. Well, okay. My last question for you. You've got essentially an entire strength and conditioning platform available to you. Is there anything that you feel you left unsaid, or any final things that you want to mention before we wrap it up?
I think that we talked about a lot of good stuff. I think that like a lot of so when you deal with strength and conditioning, it's about like it's a health and wellness thing, right? There's also financial wellness. And a lot of, I do retirement stuff, but for a lot of these companies, like they'll have me come in and just talk about financial wellness. And I think if I need to take like the advice of treating my body better, having better health and wellness, and maybe guys like you might just need to treat your financial situation better, and care for it a little more, like nurture it, you know what I mean? The wellness piece of it, because it's all intertwined, right? So um I think the wellness piece is huge. And when approaching all of this stuff, be kind to yourself, be kind and be honest. Like we talked about the budgeting piece of it, be honest, and then don't beat yourself up over it when you see what, that breakdown is that you're really doing. It's kind of like how you would treat like, an athlete that you're training. Like, you want to do whatever's going to make them keep going. And so the same thing with your financial health. Like a slip up doesn't mean you just quit and like just throw all the habits in the trash. You know what I mean? So getting back on the wagon, accepting that you're going to, slip up here and there, but it doesn't derail kind of the whole direction of everything. You know what I mean? So a lot of these things that I'm saying, I feel like translate really well with just like training and, getting healthier. It's just about habits, consistency, honesty, uh, being kind to yourself, but also challenging yourself. And I think a lot of those principles can kind of take you to where you need to be. Um, and that's sort of where I would leave it.
No, they're both forms of discipline. And I think that's why they relate so well, and exactly like you mentioned earlier, it's delayed gratification. It's the exact same thing. Like, I won't notice, if I don't eat ice cream the night before, the next day. But if I make that same decision over and over again, I may notice on the scale, I may notice from a physical standpoint that I look better. I maybe feel better about myself. There's progress to be made. There's a delayed gratification aspect to it. So I think there's a ton of parallels. And I think that's why this episode is so beneficial, because I think there's a lot of mystification of finances. I think there's a lot of worry about, I don't know about it, or I'm not doing what I need to do, so I'm just going to kind of ignore it. When strength coaches can just understand these careers are so similar, and these principles are so much the same, that you can make a difference, and you can do it quickly just by making some small changes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Mike, I appreciate you greatly, man. Seriously, thank you so much for coming on. Who would have known all those times playing NCAA, we'd be having a conversation on a podcast in 2025. It's awesome.
It was an absolute honor, and I would have done it. I wouldn't have rather done it with anybody else but you. So this was a blast. My first ever podcast appearance. I hope I didn't bore everyone, and I'm thankful to anyone that is continuing to listen to this point.
No, you crushed it. Seriously. Okay. Well, I just want to give you an opportunity to kind of, speak to services you can provide, or if anybody has any questions or follow-ups, what would be the best way to get in contact with you?
Yeah, so I'm in the business of just trying to be helpful to people. So, I don't necessarily have anything to sell or anything like that, but I will say, if you're listening right now, if you just want somebody to have a conversation with regarding finances, regarding retirement, or anything along those lines of that nature, reach out to Connor and he will connect you with me, and I'd be happy to chat with you, and you can bounce ideas or whatever we need to talk about. And maybe I'll exchange it for like a workout tip or something like that.
That seems like a pretty fair trade. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, I know I need it. So.
All right. Well, we'll leave it at that. Mike, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Absolutely. It was great. Thank you.